The Alfa Romeo Stelvio has a small place in the luxury automotive market, but they still have their own place. They're up against the BMW X3, the Mercedes GLC class, the Porsche Macan. But despite having low offerings, the Alfa Romeo brand through the Stelvio certainly does have a lot to provide those who are looking for a space in the automotive luxury crossover market. Under the hood of the Stelvio, as far as the Sprint, TI, and newly named Veloce trim, which we'll get into later on, is a 2-liter turbo 4-cylinder engine, all run through an 8-speed automatic transmission, and it puts out a class-leading 280 horsepower and 306 pound-feet of torque. This is through their all-wheel drive system, with the Sprint coming in either rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. But let's focus on the Veloce because that's the one that we have with us right now. As far as acceleration goes, there's a lot to be had here, and it's brisk, it's quick, and it's accurate. And with the 280 horsepower and 306 pound-feet of torque, the Stelvio moves very, very quickly. It's got a nearly 50-50 weight distribution, and that helps the cornering and handling perform exceptionally well. A little bit of oversteer, not too much understeer, but on the whole, the Stelvio does very well whether you're getting onto a highway, whether you're running around in city and urban conditions, or if you're doing anything in between. Regarding the 8-speed transmission, it gets a little muddy between gears 2 and 3, 3 and 4, and sometimes 4 and 5 in urban settings. Getting on the highway, going with a rapid acceleration, there's no problems there, but it's more of the slow city street speed limits that you'll find the Alfa Romeo Stelvio just has a little problem in hanging on to gears a little too long. It knows what it wants to do, it has a small hesitation in doing so. Turbo lag is at a minimum. It's still there. There'll be turbo lag with nearly any vehicle, but I'm happy the way that Alfa Romeo's tuned this so that there's a minimal turbo lag, but there's still going to be some of it. There's 3 drive modes, and it's very cleverly named DNA, as in it's in our DNA to have a great, rich racing history and bring that forward through a modern luxury SUV. So D is for dynamic and N is for natural, and they were fishing a bit here because the A stands for advanced efficiency and they couldn't call it ADE, but anyway. Most drivers of the Stelvio will live in the N mode, which is natural, and it's a well-balanced mode. It gets you the jump when it needs to, it's not overly eager, and it's still a decent and respectable driving experience at lower speeds. I don't feel a lot of people will take advantage of the D, which is dynamic mode, and I really wish they would, because it really brings the Stelvio to life, and it just adds that extra flare of excitement and the exclamation point. It's an extremely spirited drive in dynamic mode. When you're on the highway, at least for what I've done during my week with the Stelvio, I've put it in A, which is advanced efficiency / eco for a more commonly used term, and I find that still gives me the power I need for passing, but it minimizes on the fuel consumption side because I'm not drawing as much, and it's still, again, a smooth drive. I think there's this big misconception about putting it in eco or advanced efficiency mode with a lot of vehicles, that it really brings the performance side of it down and that it takes away from it. It's not going to be the same as natural or dynamic, but it's still a solid drive mode to be in. On the cornering and handling side, as I briefly touched on before with the 50-50 weight distribution, the Stelvio does it very well. Through the natural curves of the roads, whether it's on highways or city streets, there's that planted feeling that you have with a Stelvio, and it's, again, inspired by all of their rich racing history, and I find that it's one of the better SUVs in the luxury market as far as giving you that strong, stable, and planted feeling on the road, higher speeds or lower speeds through corners, twists, and turns. On the noise, vibration, harshness side, I'll give the Stelvio high marks. I won't give it full marks. Part of that might be the oversized panoramic sunroof. Part of it might be the taller windows. I find a little bit of noise bleeds in at higher speeds. It's relatively quiet at lower speeds, and if it really bothers you all that much, crank up your premium audio system, put on your favorite music, and that noise, vibration, harshness will completely go away. Moving on to the inside, it's a lot of the same of what you're used to from the 2021 model up to 2022. The dashboard is functional. It does what it's supposed to, but the race to digital for everything and bigger screens and more graphics has me hoping that the Stelvio will come out with a fully digital dash. Maybe not 2023, probably 2024, maybe 25. But the analog dials are big and the fonts are clear and it's easy to read. There's a lot of black and white here. There's not a lot of color happening, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. The function definitely comes through here. And the small screen in the middle gets you all of your information. It's not a bad system by any means. It does what it's supposed to. It's clear, it's easy to read. But to keep up with the other luxury automakers, and to be honest, some of the mainstream automakers who now have fully digital screens, I feel that Alfa Romeo should start looking at, if they haven't already, at placing a large digital dashboard as far as their future plans go. The flat bottom steering wheel is still extremely comfortable. It always throws me off whenever I step into an Alfa Romeo for the first time in a few months that the start-stop button is placed on the steering wheel itself, as opposed to anywhere else. I know Porsche has theirs on the left side for very good reason. I know some of them have push buttons where the gear selector is, like BMW, and I know that with Mercedes it's somewhere else. So peculiarisms, absolutely. Does it help them stand out? Again, absolutely. On the infotainment side of things, the screen's a little small. The fonts are still clear, so there's no problem there. But similarly to the dashboard, we're in a race, at least in the luxury world, to bigger and higher resolution screens and being able to do more through them. And I hope, with the optimism that I have that they'll eventually come out with the digital dash, I hope that the infotainment screen grows a little bit. I still like it as a horizontal shape as opposed to a vertical shape. Just wish it was a little bigger. The back of the camera is really small considering the size of the screen. But overall, it's fairly easy to navigate through and there's not too much digging to get to what you want. For 2022, there's a couple of changes. Let's start with some standard safety, which is now available on every single trim of the Stelvio. So you have blind spot monitoring, active cruise control, lane departure warning, automatic high beams, and parking sensors for your front and your rear. Definite smart move there, because a lot of standard safety is becoming more and more prominent in decision making as far as both luxury automotive makers and the mainstream automakers. On the inside, new standard features include 4 heated seats, 2 up front and for the outboard passengers in the rear. I'm not sure how many people will use the native navigation system, especially since Apple CarPlay and Android Auto are standard features here. And the last feature, I can go with it or without it, it's wireless charging. They've got to up their game a little bit, and doing this by adding these few items for 2022 as standard fare definitely increases their position on the luxury automotive market. The other change for 2022 is kind of a change and it's kind of not. It's by definition a change, and it's the naming of their different trims within the Stelvio ladder. So we still have Sprint at the bottom, we have TI as the second trim. What was known as TI Sport is now called Veloce, and I really like that move. And up top we have the Quadrifoglio, which is just a completely different animal onto its own. And why I like the name change is because there are millions of words in the English language, and it brings me back to the Ottawa Rough Riders, Saskatchewan Rough Riders in the CFL when they only had a handful of teams, and like, why would you use the same name in a small amount of offerings? And I thought the same thing here between TI and TI Sport. So I'm happy that Veloce is now its own trim. It's got its own word. So there's 4 distinct levels of trims with the Stelvio, and they're completely distinguishable from each other. These sport seats are extremely comfortable. I don't know if everybody loves strong bolstered seats. I do. Keeps my little legs in place. Side bolsters are extremely comfortable, and I got stuck on the 401 because I made a bad decision to come home in rush hour one day this week, and thankfully there was no driver fatigue, there was no soreness. I wasn't readjusting every couple of minutes, despite the fact that I didn't go over 20 kilometers per hour for the better part of an hour. Fun little note here that Alfa Romeo has embossed their logo into the headrest. It's still black, it's not quite easy to see, but when you notice it, it's just that little extra cute touch of, oh, that's a really nice move by Alfa Romeo. Rear seats are fairly comfortable. Thankfully, there are now outboard heated seats, so your passengers, especially in winter, will feel that extra little bit of warmth. It's not a bad place to be. I fit behind myself. Now, I sit all the way up and all the way back, and for my average-sized frame, I don't feel I'm in any kind of an uncomfortable position. On the outside, it's a lot of the same. The one big difference for this specific trim, being the Veloce, is they've put the word Veloce on the front quarter panel. I would rather have it in the rear. It's that if you're driving a luxury vehicle and you have a specific trim, in this case, 3rd out of 4 options, and the highest of the non-performance types of Stelvios, I want it on the back. I want people to know that I drive a Stelvio Veloce. Not a bad placement, not where I'd put it. Still has the deep V grille up front. My need for symmetry isn't quite on because the license plate has to go a bit to the left and it ends up on the driver's side. Maybe it's just me, maybe it doesn't bother anybody else but me, but I understand why they can't put the license plate in the middle, because it would pretty much be dragging on the ground, because that's how deep the V grille is up front. I know they didn't have many other options, but for me, it's an irk. You have the nice LED headlights up front, very recognizable face, and just like BMW and their new design language up front, it's unmistakable. And even though there's not a lot of Alfa Romeos on the road right now, it's very, very recognizable, and you know it a mile away, because there is really nothing like this as far as the front end appearance goes out there. Body lines along the side still look nice and smooth and clean. There's not a lot of over-engineering here. The Alfa team has done a great job at still producing something that's eye-catching without it being in your face and very exclaimed, like, look at me, I need to have everybody know that I'm a luxury SUV. Rims, not my favorite in the industry. In fact, they're probably some of my least favorite. I don't like all the curved lines in the rim design here. I prefer more of the clean and classic look. It suits the vehicle very well. My personal taste, not all that much. And then going around the rear, you have those nice, huge circular finishers for the exhaust. Again, more of those clean design lines. And in the luxury world, I don't think there needs to be a lot happening to show off how elegant your design is without being overtly in your face with, look how great I can be. If you're looking for a luxury SUV that's got class-leading horsepower, a distinct front end, clean design lines, very strong and respectable driving dynamics, and something that stands out and isn't quite like everything else, and you want to be a little different, put the Alfa Romeo Stelvio on your test drive list, or at least do some digging on it and see if it can check off as many boxes as it can as far as your needs items go. For Driving.ca, I'm Jay Canna. For more news, reviews, and information you can use, visit our website, and we encourage you to engage with us on our social media platforms.